Good evening and welcome. Tonight I'm going to be reading to you from this book about Jamaica. I accidentally ordered these extra long nails. I didn't mean to, but they're for breast cancer research. So anyway, also I hope this isn't too much of a distraction. Long story short, I burned myself on a candle, so I'll leave it at that. I totally didn't light anything on fire or anything anyway. We're going to read this section tonight, a closer look at Jamaica. We're going to read The Blue Mountains, Buccaneers and Pirates, Cultural Icon of Jamaica, The Great Port Royal Earthquake, Independence Day, King Sugar, Kingston, Legends and Folktales, The Maroons, The National Heroes, Pollution in the Kingston Harbor, Rastafarians, reggae music, the slave trade, and tourism. So let's just dive right in, if I can. Here we go. The Blue Mountains. The Blue Mountains form the best-known mountain range in Jamaica. The Blue Mountains and John Crow Mountains spread over 3 parishes, St. Andrew, St. Thomas, and Portland, in eastern Jamaica. Beneath the thick canopy of vegetation lie scenic waterfalls, pristine lagoons, rivers, and a multitude of flora and fauna. Thick forests covered these mountains when Columbus first stepped on the island in 1494. Since then, however, much of the forest land has been cleared to make way for the country's increasing population and economic demands. The greatest species diversity in the Caribbean can be found here. Many of the plant and animal species here cannot be found elsewhere in the world. The mountains are also home to the Papilio humerus, which is the world's second largest butterfly. In 1993, the Blue Mountain and John Crow Mountain National Park was established to protect these areas from deforestation and to prevent the diverse flora and fauna from becoming extinct. The national park covers an area of 196,775 acres. The rivers of the Blue and John Crow Mountains supply water for the Kingston area and for several towns within and around the mountain ranges. Blue Mountain Coffee. The coffee plant is not native to Jamaica. It was first brought to the island in 1728 by Sir Nicholas Laws, the Jamaican governor at the time. Laws had obtained the coffee seedlings from the island of Martinique, which lies just north of Trinidad and Tobago. The coffee seedlings thrived in the high altitudes of the Blue Mountains, and soon large areas of land on the slopes of the Blue Mountains were cleared to set up coffee plantations. Coffee became a major export crop for Jamaica. Only coffee grown in selected areas of the Blue Mountains can be labeled Jamaican Blue Mountain Coffee, a popular gourmet coffee. To maintain the high quality of Jamaican Blue Mountain coffee, the Coffee Industry Board was established in 1950. It has set strict standards for the cultivation, processing, and export of Jamaican Blue Mountain coffee. Today, between 85 and 90% of the island's coffee exports are sold to Japan. Moving on to Buccaneers and Pirates. Do you know the difference? You're going to learn now if you don't. Jamaica has a rich history of relations with buccaneers and pirates. Movies have been made about pirates who traveled to the Caribbean Sea and used Port Royal in Jamaica as the base of their operations and a place to spend their loot. Buccaneers. Buccaneers first appeared after the Spanish occupation of the Caribbean, driven by the need to colonize other territories, mainly to capture Spanish lands. Other Europeans, such as the Portuguese, English, French, and Dutch, urged individual captains or buccaneers to fight against the Spanish. In the 1500s, Jamaica became an ideal base for operations from which the buccaneers could attack Spanish ships in the Caribbean. Encouraged by Queen Elizabeth I, Francis Drake led attacks on ships and towns. Before long, however, the Buccaneers grew into a powerful and ruthless force that the English crown could not control. They raided far and wide and were feared throughout the Caribbean. These buccaneers then turned to privateering. Privateers were allowed to keep a portion of the loot from the ships they raided. Let's read about pirates. After England made peace with its rivals, the buccaneers were regarded as pirates. The word pirate simply means one who robs or plunders on the sea. Pirates therefore added to the colony's problems, and the English government did much to get rid of them. Several pirates rose to fame for their cruelty, daring, and occasionally their flamboyant ways. Edward Teach, also known as Blackbeard, was an English pirate active from 1716 to 1718. To terrorize his victims, Teach often wore burning fuses in his uncombed beard and hair, which you can see in this picture. He went further to inflict his cruelty on not only his prisoners but also his own crew. Teach was finally killed in a battle against the British. Another pirate was Calico Jack Rackham, popularly known for his love of calico underwear. Like many pirates before him, he was captured and executed. His body was hung in an iron frame on a small quay off Port Royal. The quay is still called Rackham's Quay. Let's read about a cultural icon of Jamaica. Louise Bennett Coverley, folklorist and gifted poet, has been one of Jamaica's most prolific cultural icons. Over the years, she contributed significantly to the development of Jamaica's language, poetry, and drama. On the stage, however, she made a major contribution. She brought attention and appreciation for patois, the dialect that most Jamaicans speak, and carved a place for herself in the nation's cultural history. In addition to national acclaim, she became widely known in the United Kingdom and Canada. There she is. Wonderful. What a fantastic smile. Poetry. Born in 1919, Louise Bennett Coverley began writing poetry in her teens. She became known as Miss Lou, and through her work she still serves as an ambassador of Jamaican culture. She has appeared in humorous leading roles in several Jamaican pantomimes and television shows. The popular television show Ring Ding especially became a hugely effective medium through which Jamaican folklore and folk songs were preserved and passed on to children. Many Jamaicans grew up on this program and still remember fondly the antics of Miss Lou and Mas Eric, her husband. Miss Lou, however, is more than a comedian and poet. A keen observer and commentator on the major social issues of the time, Miss Lou conveyed her views with wit and humor. Honors. Jamaican cultural life today owes much to Louise Bennett Coverley's contributions. For her work, she has been honored with a host of titles, including the Member of the Order of the British Empire awarded by Queen Elizabeth II in 1961, the Musgrave Gold and Silver medals given by the Institute of Jamaica, the Norman Manley Award of Excellence, and in 1974, a member of the Order of Jamaica, which entitled her to be addressed as the Honorable Louise Bennett Coverley. The Great Port Royal Earthquake. In the 17th century, Port Royal was a flourishing trading post of great economic importance to the English. Port Royal also had a reputation for being the wickedest city in the world, because it was the center of privateering activities in the Caribbean. Brothels, gambling houses, and drinking dens lined the streets of the town. At 11:40 a.m. on June 7th, 1692, a large destructive earthquake shook the town. In just a matter of a few seconds, an estimated 2,000 people were killed. In the days following the earthquake, a further 3,000 citizens died of injuries and diseases. The events of that day brought an end to Port Royal's fame. Port Royal's residents were killed by falling buildings, buried as the earth shifted, or dragged out to sea in the tidal wave that followed the shocks. Others died from the many epidemics that spread right after the earthquake. Most of the ships in the harbor were also destroyed. Part of the town sank into the sea and can still be seen on sunny, cloudless days when the sea is calm. Port Royal has never returned to its days of wealth and fame. After the earthquake, many theories surfaced concerning the reasons for its occurrence. The reason that all the people in 1692 agreed upon was that the earthquake was a punishment of the citizens of Port Royal for their wickedness and for not maintaining God's commandments. Although the earthquake was felt island-wide and damaged other towns, the devastation at Port Royal was unmatched elsewhere. It was therefore seen as a sign of God's wrath on the people of Port Royal. In a gesture to appease God and to ask for his forgiveness, church services and prayer meetings were held across the island. I'm sure you can see with the light. With periods of mourning officially sanctioned by the governor. Through the centuries, the town suffered more disasters, including fire, hurricanes, and earthquakes. The most serious was the earthquake of 1907, in which buildings and property worth millions of dollars were destroyed. Independence Day. On the night of August 5th, 1962, all 35,000 seats in the newly constructed National Stadium of Kingston were filled with Jamaicans eagerly awaiting the arrival of the country's independence. On the stroke of midnight, the Union Jack, the flag of the United Kingdom, was lowered, and the Jamaican anthem was played and heard for the first time. With that ceremony, which ended with a fireworks display, Jamaica became a free and autonomous member of the British Commonwealth of Nations. Jamaica's independence was celebrated over the next 2 days, and on the second day, August 7th, Jamaica's first parliamentary session was held. Jamaica's first Prime Minister, Alexander Bustamante, received the constitutional documents from Princess Margaret, who attended the ceremony for her sister, Queen Elizabeth II. 40 Years of Independence. This is a much older book. I think this came out in 2003, so this is talking about the 2002 anniversary. But anyway, in 2002, Jamaica celebrated its 40th year as an independent nation. Organization for the year's celebrations began early, with events kicking off in July. The Jamaica Festival events included the schools and adult festival competitions, the popular song competition, formerly known as the Festival Song Competition, in which individuals compete for the coveted top prize for most popular song title, the Festival Queen competition, and other local events such as the crowning of the Farm Queen during the Denbigh Agricultural Show. The Independence Day Float Parade, once a common feature of the independence celebrations in Jamaica, were reintroduced. The independence festivities also included the opening of the new Emancipation Park, a welcomed addition to the busy Kingston scene. Street dances, parades, fireworks, and church services were all a part of the mass celebration of Jamaica's 40th year of independence. These celebrations extended well beyond the Jamaican shores, as Jamaican consulates and overseas territories held their own celebrations, and Jamaican communities across the world celebrated along with their relatives and friends in Jamaica. King Sugar. Sugar became the main product of the Jamaican economy, beginning with the English occupation of the island. Faced with the economic decline of tobacco on the world market, the English had to find a viable alternative in order to fill the requirements of the new colony to become a producer of tropical products for the English people. The one product found most suited to the soil and climate of Jamaica that could be produced on a large scale was sugar. Sugar plantations. Sugar plantations were usually large-scale holdings ranging from a few hundred to thousands of acres of land. A sugar plantation aimed at being self-sufficient, so land was provided for growing timber for fuel, for pasture, and of course, for planting sugarcane. About 1/3 of the prime plantation land was under sugar cultivation. On the grounds were the buildings required for sugarcane processing: the mill house, boiling house, trash house, distilling house, curling house, and still house. The other buildings on the plantation included the Great House, which was the residence of the owner if he lived on the plantation. If the owner did not live in Jamaica, usually an attorney or an overseer occupied the house. Producing sugar. Each crop year began in August. During this time, called the dead season, the cane fields were weeded, cleared, and made ready for the new crop. The hardest work was done by the youngest and strongest slaves. By the beginning of November, cane fields were reaped. Crop time began then and continued until July. The cane was crushed at the mill, the juice sent to the boiling house, and the trash sent to the trash house to be used as fuel. In the boiling house, the liquid was passed through several copper boilers. When the liquid began to crystallize in the hottest copper boiler, it was put in hogsheads or barrels. The remaining molasses drained through tiny holes made in the hogsheads. The substance left inside the hogsheads were called muscovado sugar. It was sent to England for processing and sold on the market. Sugar production in present-day Jamaica. Sugar is still one of the chief crops in Jamaica. This industry, however, has faced many problems in the past few years. Low yields and inefficient production techniques have placed it in secondary importance to other industries such as tourism, Jamaica's main economic activity. Sugar industry officials blame heavy rainfall, a decline in quality, and illegal cane field burning as factors that contributed to the decline of Jamaica's 2002 sugar crop yield. Kingston. Kingston is Jamaica's capital city and covers an area of less than 8.5 square miles. The city is also the country's smallest and most crowded parish. The population density in Kingston is 4,760 persons per square mile. History. Kingston developed after Port Royal was destroyed by an earthquake in 1692 and then a fire in 1703. Port Royal residents began to move across the harbor, and Kingston soon replaced Port Royal as Jamaica's main port. In 1713, Kingston was made a parish, and by the end of the 18th century, more than 3,000 brick homes had been built in the area. Kingston became a city in 1802. Kingston developed rapidly to become the country's trade center. The growth in business at the Kingston Harbor attracted more and more Jamaicans, and soon the residents of Kingston began to spill over into St. Andrew, a neighboring parish. The building of roads and houses in Kingston roughly followed a grid-like pattern, and except for a few additions, the original development pattern of the city has remained. Kingston today. Located in southeastern Jamaica, Kingston continues to develop in all directions except the south, obviously, because that's where the ocean is. Industrial and residential districts are growing eastward from Kingston. To the north, a residential area is expanding into St. Andrew. To the west, another residential area is expanding into Portmore, St. Catherine. Residential developments are especially welcome in Kingston because they provide homes for Jamaicans who have to work in Kingston and cannot find satisfactory housing in the area. For this reason, Portmore is sometimes called a dormitory residential area. As Kingston expanded, the Knutsford Park racetrack gave way to the development of New Kingston, which is a large commercial center. Development of New Kingston started in the mid-1960s, and today the area bears little resemblance to the Dust Bowl that existed after the track closed. Dominating the skyline in New Kingston are high-rise buildings, which house various businesses, banks, and large hotels, including Hilton Kingston, Wyndham, and Pegasus. Complementing the commercial developments in New Kingston are also numerous food and entertainment establishments, which include a supermarket, a cinema, shopping malls, nightclubs, and fast food outlets. Legends and folktales. Jamaica's oral traditions originated from African slaves and date as far back as the 17th century. Today, legends and folktales play a very important part in Jamaica's culture. Through these stories, handed down from generation to generation by word of mouth, children learn of the strength and resistance activities of slaves, the supernatural strength of their heroes, and the cunning of their forefathers. Forces and figures. Jamaican folklore includes two types of spiritual elements or characters. Obeah is believed to have originated from the southern Caribbean region. It has been described as both a system of belief and a figure that uses sorcery or magic rituals. According to believers, Obeah can perform both good and evil deeds, but it is more likely to cause trouble. As a result, believers are always mindful not to tempt Obeah by saying out loud how fortunate or how happy they are, for fear that Obeah will change the situation. Jumbies are said to be the spirits of dead people who do not want to leave. Jumbies are believed to live in people's houses and can be either good or evil. Other legends involve the supernatural abilities of common people or historical figures of Jamaica. For example, Nanny of Maroons, Jamaica's only female national hero, is represented in stories as a fearless warrior who uses supernatural powers to defeat British soldiers. In recent years, to many Jamaicans, it is important to maintain the oral storytelling tradition and to compile and publish Jamaican folktales. Amina Blackwood Meeks, the founder of Jack Mandora, the Storytelling Association of Jamaica, keeps Jamaica's folklore alive through storytelling shows and workshops. Children are also told these stories by their parents and grandparents. Many stories have been published and are distributed in schools where special periods are often devoted to reading these books. Folklorists such as Louise Bennett Coverley have helped in this endeavor by fostering a love and respect for Jamaica's folktales. Contemporary authors include Martha W. Beckwith, Pamela C. Smith, and Darrell C. Dance. The Maroons. When the English arrived to seize Jamaica from the Spanish in 1655, the Spanish escaped to the neighboring island of Cuba with all their possessions. Before the Spanish left, they freed their African slaves who took shelter in the forests of the Blue Mountains. This group of freed slaves was given the name Maroons, which originates from a Spanish word meaning wild or untamed. The Maroons continued to defy English possession of the island for many years by raiding English plantations and freeing slaves. In the 1700s, Maroon populations grew significantly with the addition of runaway slaves from plantations across the island. The Maroons sought to live freely and settled in the mountains, where they created villages far away from their oppressors at the sugar plantations. Over time, Maroon settlement became clearly divided and consisted of the Windward and the Leeward Maroons. The Windward Maroons dominated eastern Jamaica, while the Leeward Maroons took the islands west. Slide this over. Although the Maroons settled far away from the sugar plantations to avoid recapture by British authorities, the distance that separated the Maroons and the planters did little to reduce the number of conflicts between them. They fought many small battles and 2 all-out wars, the First and Second Maroon Wars. After the Second Maroon War, the Leeward Maroons in Trelawney were deported to Nova Scotia in Canada, and later to Sierra Leone in Africa. The Maroons today. Groups of Maroons still exist today, holding onto their cultural practices and history. Each year they celebrate the signing of the 1739 treaty and the recognition of Nanny of the Maroons as one of Jamaica's national heroes. Festivals are held each year to celebrate aspects of Maroon culture. Maroons who have moved to other parts of the world also attend the festivals. In addition, there are efforts to attract tourists and to promote the Maroon culture throughout the island and the wider international community. Speaking of, let's talk about the national heroes, which this list has definitely expanded. The national heroes, I believe Usain Bolt is now a national hero, but anyway. Since 1962, when Jamaica celebrated its independence, distinguished individuals have been selected from throughout the nation's history to form a group known and honored as Jamaica's national heroes. The Order of National Hero of Jamaica was created in 1965. The first national hero named in 1969 were Paul Bogle, George William Gordon, and Marcus Messiah Garvey. A farmer and a preacher, Bogle is best remembered for leading the 1865 Morant Bay Rebellion. Gordon was hanged for his alleged role in the Morant Bay Rebellion. He was also once a member of the House of Assembly. Garvey is honored for founding the Universal Negro Improvement Association, or UNIA. In 1973, Alexander Bustamante and Norman Washington Manley were declared national heroes. Bustamante and Manley were founders of the two main political parties that played important roles in the events leading up to Jamaica's independence from the British. In 1975, two more heroes, Sam Sharpe and Nanny of the Maroons, were named. Both lived during the period of slavery in Jamaica, hated slavery, and tried to separate ways to end the system that enslaved them. The only female national hero, Nanny was a leader of the Windward Maroons and forged a fierce resistance movement against slavery from the town named after her, Nannytown, in the parish of Portland. Under Nanny, who was an exceptional military leader, the Windward Maroons raided plantations, set slaves free, and lived relatively free lives in the hills of the Blue Mountains. Nanny died in the 1750s. Sharpe, on the other hand, did not think that violence was necessary for the slaves to achieve freedom. A preacher, he chose instead to ask the slaves to refuse to do any work on Christmas Day of 1831. This was to have been the first step in his long-term plans for attaining freedom for the slaves. On Christmas Eve, however, some of his followers rebelled and urged more to join them. Plantation buildings were destroyed and sugarcane fields torched as a result of the rebellion, which gave the government the excuse to shoot and murder the people without mercy. On May 23, 1832, Sharpe was executed, although he himself was not responsible for the mayhem that the slaves caused. Pollution in the Kingston Harbor. Kingston Harbor is the world's 7th largest natural harbor. Formerly a major nursery farming 15 species of fish, Kingston Harbor used to produce about 800,000 pounds of edible fish each year. Today it is a sanctuary or haven for birds, and some reptiles, shrimp, oysters, and dolphins are also known to live near the harbor. The problem. Marine life in Kingston Harbor largely has been dead for decades, the result of effluents and other stifling material that enter the water. For instance, it is estimated that 20 million gallons of untreated sewage enter the harbor on a daily basis. In addition, tons of sediment accumulate each year. Chemicals and other substances from farming and industry also reach the harbor from runoff via rivers and gullies. High levels of heavy metals such as lead, arsenic, and mercury are found in the fish in the harbor. Increasing levels of pesticides are also found in the harbor's water and fish, posing a potential health hazard for birds, animals, and humans who consume the fish. In recent years, the Jamaican government has conducted dredging operations in the Kingston Harbor. The process of dredging requires the use of large machinery to scoop up materials from the bottom of the harbor. Dredging the Kingston Harbor is required to clear the waters for vessels entering the harbor. This procedure, however, is unpopular among environmentalists who fear that it might cause damage to Jamaica's beautiful coral reefs. The future of Kingston Harbor. In recent years, the Jamaican government has worked with international organizations such as the World Bank, the U.S. Agency for International Development, or the USAID, and the United Nations Environment Program to reduce the pollution levels in the Kingston Harbor. For example, the existing sewage treatment plants are inadequate and need to be updated. The Jamaican government also set up the National Environment and Planning Agency, or NEPA, in 2001 to address the worsening pollution levels in the Kingston Harbor. Any improvements, however, will take a long time to implement. Rastafarians. Rastafarianism is a religion that was created in 20th century Jamaica. Like many other religions, Rastafarianism includes different sects. Among them are the Nyabingi order, the Bobo Shanti, and the 12 Tribes of Israel. In the 1930s, Marcus Mosiah Garvey, a Jamaican black nationalist, developed a set of teachings which became the foundation of Rastafarianism. Garvey's teachings principally urged black people to empower themselves and also to return to Ethiopia and Africa, the homeland of their ancestors, where they belonged and could lead a better life. Earlier in 1914, Garvey also founded the Universal Negro Improvement Association, or UNIA. Garvey's cause appealed to many Jamaicans who felt oppressed in their own homeland due to the rule of the British. Many Rastafarians believe that former Emperor of Ethiopia, I always forget how to pronounce his name, Haile Selassie, I believe, is the Black Messiah, the savior of all black people who have been forced to live under white oppressors. As a result, Rastafarians also believe that Ethiopia is the Promised Land. Before Haile Selassie was crowned in 1930, his name was Rastafari. Followers of Garvey adopted Selassie's pre-coronation name, Ras meaning prince and Tafari meaning to be feared. Rastafarian communities. Rastafarian communities differ from one another. For instance, in the Nyabingi order, elders or priests guide brothers and sisters, often unrelated by blood but related by their religious affiliation, and they observe the Sabbath on Tuesdays. Among their lifestyle habits are a diet of organic products such as grains, legumes, herbs, barks, vegetables, and non-alcoholic products. Distinctly different and dressed in long robes and tightly wrapped turbans are the Bobo Shanti Rastafarians. They live separately from all other Rastafarians and the rest of society. Their commune is currently based near Bull Bay in the parish of St. Thomas and is operated like a small independent society, a government within a government. They have their own constitution and reject the lifestyle, values, and mores of the general society for their own, which are based largely on Old Testament teachings. They produce and manufacture their own products, selling brooms and mats to generate income, which benefits the entire commune. Reggae music. Reggae developed from a combination of Jamaican folk music, traditional African rhythms, and U.S. rhythm and blues. Reggae originated from mento, a simple art form. Laborers and Jamaicans with direct Maroon ancestry developed mento in the early years of the 20th century. Other music forms such as ska, which evolved in the late 1950s, and rocksteady, which is similar to ska but has a slower beat, also influenced reggae music. In the 1970s, reggae music took the form of music with a message. Groups and individuals used reggae to express messages of politics, religion, or social commentary. People in this war-torn period fully accepted reggae's conscious lyrics. Over the years, the popularity of reggae music increased both locally and internationally. Reggae music not only played on stages and on radio, but it could also be heard in the films of this period. For example, the music by Jimmy Cliff was featured in the movie The Harder They Come. Robert Bob Nesta Marley, which is going to be the topic of our video tomorrow. The world of reggae lost its most influential international star when Robert Nesta Marley died in 1981. Initially, Marley was a member of the band The Wailers. Social commentary inspired the band to produce many songs. Band members, including Marley, sought to make their voices heard by writing about third world issues and also those within the Jamaican society in their songs. Rebel Music and Them Belly Full are two examples of the band's songs. The former criticized police harassment, while the latter was about poverty and hunger. In late 1974, Marley formed a new group in which he was the lead singer, and Judy Mowat, Marcia Griffiths, and his wife Rita Marley were backup singers. They called themselves the I-Threes. The Wailers reunited to perform again by early 1976. The band also began a world tour, which included countries in North America, Europe, and Asia. Perhaps their most meaningful concert of all was the one they gave in Zimbabwe, Africa. Bob Marley was awarded the Order of Merit for his contribution to reggae music in Jamaica. the slave trade. With the coming of the Europeans to Jamaica and the development of large sugar plantations, farmers felt a need for a reliable, cheap, and abundant labor supply. Taino laborers were not sufficient. In fact, the Europeans had reduced their numbers drastically by enslaving them and treating them harshly. With the opening of the African coast to trade with the European nations, Africans were quickly seen as a good source of labor for the Jamaican and the wider Caribbean's plantations. Middle Passage. Captured from Western Africa, slaves were shipped to the Caribbean through a voyage called the Middle Passage. The slaves on these ships traveling the Middle Passage were chained below deck and only brought up once a day for exercise. Conditions below deck were deplorable. Many diseases and epidemics broke out among the slaves. They also suffered from heat stroke and severe undernourishment. Many died as a result from these conditions. Slavery and emancipation. In Jamaica, slaves were sold first to the Spanish and later to English plantation owners, mainly to plant and reap sugar. Newly arrived slaves were put through a process of seasoning in which they were supervised by a plantation slave and trained in the work of a Jamaican plantation. Seasoned slaves were placed into various slave occupational groups, such as the house or domestic slaves, the field slaves, and the artisan slaves. The life of a slave was very hard, and many slaves died as a result of their harsh work environments. The first half of the 1800s signaled the beginning of the end of slavery. More and more people grew intensely opposed to slavery. The economic climate also called for the end of slavery because many slaves rebelled against the plantation owners, who found it costly to keep them under control. Additionally, a growing humanitarian movement in England contributed to the end of slavery. The slaves themselves also demanded their freedom through protests and acts of rebellion. As a result of all these factors, the British Parliament eventually granted slaves full emancipation on August 1st, 1838. And on a happier note, let's end on tourism. Tourist earnings provided about 1/4 of the country's gross domestic product, or GDP, in 1995. Since then, tourism has been supporting an increasingly large part of the Jamaican economy. Today, tourism is Jamaica's largest foreign exchange earner and also the largest employer of the local Jamaican population. About 32,000 Jamaicans are employed in the service industries related to tourism in Jamaica. The country's tropical climate, exquisite landscapes, and superb beaches attract many thousands of people from all over the world. The main tourist centers in Jamaica are Montego Bay in St. James, Ocho Rios in St. Anne, and Port Antonio in Portland. The resort area of Negril in the parish of Westmoreland is a highly popular tourist destination. Many tourists also visit the museums, clubs, and other historical attractions in the capital city, Kingston. The Jamaican Tourist Board, the JTB, is the main marketing agency of the tourist industry in Jamaica. Ecotourism in Jamaica. The northern coast of Jamaica has traditionally been the center of tourist activity on the island. Recently, however, Jamaica's southern coast has also grown as a tourist destination because of the growing popularity of nature tourism, or ecotourism, in these areas. Tourists who are more adventurous travel to the southern coast to visit the national parks in these areas and to hike in the Blue Mountains. Sustainable tourism. The dramatic growth of the tourist industry in Jamaica has brought problems to the island's natural environment. In order to meet the rising numbers of tourists visiting the island annually, many forest areas and natural habitats on the island are cleared away to build more restaurants, hotels, and shopping centers. The government of Jamaica has now recognized the need to emphasize environmental protection and to create a tourist industry that is environmentally friendly. And that's the end for tonight. Let me tap with my super long nails. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this video relaxing and